Hi, everybody. This is Dean Hutchison from Surrogacy and Egg Donation. Just wanted to let you know we'll be starting very soon. We just want the room to populate as much as possible. There's a lot of you joining in, so we'll start in a couple minutes, and we're excited to be with you and to share this presentation. Talk to you soon. Bye. Hi, everyone. It's Dean again. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. Just get ready. We'll be right with you, and it should be a little under an hour or so once we get started. We have a great panel for you, and we're excited to speak to you. Thanks. Okay, we're going to get started. Looks like we got a bunch in here, and all of our panelists are in the panel area. So again, I'm Dean Hutchison. I'm Director of Legal and Vice President at Circle Surrogacy and Egg Donation. And we're going to bring to you a webinar just talking about Circle and the U.S. surrogacy experience, and touch on a little what's going on now. So before we get going tonight, there are 3 of us on the panel. So again, I'm Dean. Brett Griffin-Young will also be on the panel. Brett is our International Outreach Associate. He's a parent through surrogacy to his son, Sebastian. He's actually got a child on the way as well. And then at the end, we'll hear from Chris. Chris is a Circle parent, beautiful daughter, Astrid, from Australia, and he'll talk to you about his journey with Circle, as well as some of the ins and outs of going home, etc. So before we get going, I just want to go through a couple just information before we start. So right now you are in listen only mode, so you won't be able to speak to us. We can't hear any questions, no verbal commands. But there is a way to send questions. On the control panel on the right, there is a question block. You can, at any time during the presentation, just write your question in, send it. We're going to wait till the end to go through them. But if you have to leave for some reason, everything is being recorded on this webinar. It'll be immediately uploaded, and then it'll be emailed out to you after today. So if you have to leave early and we didn't get to your question, you will get an answer after the fact. We just don't stop the presentation for the question, so we can keep a flow to it. So populate the question box as it goes, and we'll get to it at the end. So just to give you a little agenda on tonight, we're going to talk about, why to do surrogacy in the United States, why it's safer, etc. We're going to talk about how Circle surrogacy and egg donation is different, how to become a parent as an Australian through surrogacy. We're going to overview of our fixed costs and our legal process. We're going to do an overview of just the process of finding donors if you need them, finding surrogates. We're going to have an Australian parent, as I already mentioned, Chris, share his experience, and then talk about how you can get in touch with us in the future to have a private one-on-one consultation. All right, so why is U.S. surrogacy safer and more secure? Part of the reason that the U.S. is a great option for people is the ease and ability to get home quicker after the surrogacy is over. As you may or may not know, every child born in the United States is a U.S. citizen solely by the fact that they were born here. So they're entitled to U.S. travel documents. Usually in times where there's not a global pandemic raging through the world, you can get an immediate passport or expedited emergency passport in the United States, and those are somewhat still going on now, but a little delayed. So U.S. passports you can get in 24 to 72 hours from when you have a birth certificate in hand. So it's very easy to get that document, get the kind of immediate emergency travel visa from Australia, and get home. We have people usually getting home within 4 weeks, sometime within 2 weeks after birth, to do that. U.S. has a long legal history, as well as many states now with full statutory protections for surrogacy, but we have over 20 years now of legal history in different states giving intended parents full rights to their children prior to birth, naming them as the sole parents through court orders, again coming a month or two prior to the baby even coming, to add that protection. Some states it's still done post-birth, but basically the case law in those states have said, the child is basically the intended parent's child when they send the contract. It's just they can't do the legal work until after birth. So these are some of the main reasons. It's from a legal sense as well as from an ease of travel. It's a wonderful place to do surrogacy on top of I think the vetting process for surrogates, which Brett will go through. I think the relative non-social stigma with surrogacy, and the fact that so many hospitals have dealt with surrogacy births, so many courts have dealt with the parentage work, that it's a very receptive and open place to do this. You're not worried about people feeling certain negative things towards you or thinking a judge may not sign something. It's a pretty routine process throughout the country. The surrogates themselves, you obviously seen other countries where they do surrogacy, and it tends to be almost mainly motivated from a monetary standpoint, and maybe not the best surrogates in the world in terms of health care, in terms of health of them, in terms of social status. Whereas in the United States, agencies like Circle have a very thorough screening process initially, just to let the surrogates potentially meet the intended parents, which includes psych screening, it includes social work screening, it includes psychology tests, it includes reviews of medical records, criminal checks, background. So all this is being done before you ever even meet your potential surrogate. You'll know when you're getting that profile to review that, all right, my doctor's already done a nice review of her medical records, that I know that a team has already had multiple hour-long and multiple hour conferences with her, et cetera. So you feel a lot more secure before you ever just have a Skype or a Zoom meeting with them. So financial security is another big one, and here in the U.S., most states that have statutes regarding surrogacy, and just most surrogacy agencies do this anyway, but set up private escrow accounts for intended parents. So when they make those payments to their agency, it's going into a separate account, separate from the company's bank accounts. That is what's usually called an IOLTA account, and that's what we use, which is a interest on lawyer trust account. So it's held by financial institutions. It's also overseen by the Board of Bar Overseers, which oversees attorneys here in the United States, so that if there's any issues happening with that money, not only is the person who owns its right to practice law in jeopardy, but also obviously criminal inquiries, et cetera. The money is protected up to $250,000 from our FDIC. And there'll never be that close to that much money at one time in your account. So if anything was to happen to the company or any bad dealings with the money, there's this protection up to a certain amount. So you have not only have security in the law that you're going to get your parentage, security in getting home, security in the surrogates that are being chosen, but also security in where your money is being placed during this process. So why should one choose Circle over the other agencies? We talk about a lot, and Brett and I, when we meet with parents, that there are, we're not the only agency in the United States. We're not the only good agency. There's a lot of good agencies that do what we do. But what differs Circle from other agencies? Number one, we're what's called a full service agency. And that means we have a lot of the processes in-house at Circle. We have a full legal team. We have 9 attorneys on staff. We have accountants. We have social workers. We have case managers. We have social work team for not only surrogates but also intended parents. So when issues arise, there's no scrambling to find third parties to come in to help with a situation. We individualize our legal plan so that each person, you're going to have different setups. Some will be hetero couple, some will use an egg donor, some will be gay, some will have a single, some will have multiple citizenships, but we make individual plans for each intended parent to make sure all the right processes are being done for that intended parent or intended parents. We offer 2 exclusive fixed cost programs. I'll go through it later on, but we have 2 programs where basically you're paying a little more money up front, but you're protecting yourself that if there is a major issue in your program, or even if you just have a miscarriage 2-3 months in, you're not worrying to have to pay more into your account to continue on in the process. Basically, when you match with a surrogate and that last payment is made into your escrow account, there's nothing else you're paying over the course other than your own expenses in terms of travel and IVF, et cetera. So we help control costs in the sense that we're not letting you have a huge hit. You're paying a little extra so that everyone kind of shares in that risk. Our personal experience in longevity. So, over 40% of Circle's staff now is either a parent through surrogacy, a former prior surrogate, an egg donor, or someone who's gone through IVF for their own childbearing. When we have big group meetings and we're going over potential changes to Circle, et cetera, in our program, we have kind of the mindset from all these different fields of, what was it like as a surrogate? What was it like as intended parent? What do you think will be better in this situation? And everyone obviously has kind of a little deeper investment in this process because they've gone through it and they've helped a couple have a child through surrogacy as a surrogate or donor, or they're a parent themselves through the process. And our longevity, Circle has basically been in existence for 25 years now. We were founded by John Weltman, who was a lawyer and a parent through surrogacy twice. His sons are 24 and 25, or might even be 25 and 26 now. But John kind of started Circle based on his own experience with his surrogate, and back then it was surrogate and egg donor because there was no gestational surrogacy. It was called traditional surrogacy. So because of John's very strong relationship with his surrogate and egg donor, he wanted to build Circle the same, that we strive for this relationship-based model where all the parties have a nice, more than just this kind of business type relationship during the process, and not only during the process but after the process, that some relationship builds between you and your surrogate, maybe you and your egg donor. And we've been advising on known egg donation, for 20 plus years, when most of the community was anonymous only. And I think the whole surrogacy world has shifted in the last 5 years or so to make almost everything known. So we were ahead of the curve in that situation. But I think John's own journey and John's view of how this relationship should happen obviously guided Circle, and really has guided kind of the whole surrogacy world. And then, as I've already mentioned, our screening process, I think, is second to none. A lot of people will ask me as the lawyer, what's the best state legally to do surrogacy? And my answer is usually, really you could work in almost any state, including ones where surrogacy is illegal, as long as you work with an agency that really properly vets surrogates, egg donors, and intended parents, that we're finding people that are that we think are right and ready mentally for this process. And Brett and Chris will talk about their own processes, but it does take a certain mindset to be ready to do this, not only as a surrogate, but also as an intended parent. So, I think we're second to none. And I think also the fact that we give this full support throughout the process from a mental health standpoint really helps both surrogates and intended parents. Our success rates, I think, are unparalleled as well in the industry. We've had it fully audited by accounting firms here in the United States, and based on the journeys, the success rate is well over 90% for those who've had at least one transfer, and then for those who've had a 2 or 3, it's almost 100%. The reason we started our fixed fee program was to get as many people as possible through the process. I think one of the main things that can hinder a process or maybe end a process is the money issue, and that is an intended parent, needing multiple transfers, needing a new donor, a new surrogate, and then all of a sudden that 100, 150 to 200 becomes 250 to 300 because of the extra IVF, the extra matching costs, the extra surrogate fees. But we try and encompass all of that. So everyone's, as I said, everyone's paying a little extra. So in the most perfect journey, where you only had one transfer and had success, you may pay a little more than you would have without the fixed fee program. But if you do have that miscarriage or two surrogate rematches or something bad happens in your journey, you're not paying anything extra. So we want, as I said, we want everyone to get to the finish line, and I think it's the best way to do it. So a quick overview of legal and insurance, and I introduced myself. I didn't give you any background. I'll give you a 10-second spiel on Dean Hutchison, but I've been with Circle in its basically legal departments for 16 years now. I started right out of law school working for John Weltman for both his legal practice and Circle. I was probably doing about 30% of my work in surrogacy, 70% in general litigation. But I stayed on with John after that first year and was working as a lawyer, but helping Circle. And then about 10 years ago now, Circle just grew to a place where it consumed John's professional life. He wound down the majority of his litigation practice and separated Circle from the law firm. And I followed into the legal department. I then became the director of the legal department a couple years later. And during that time, I was also the vice chairman, and now I'm currently the chairman of the American Bar Association's Assisted Reproductive Technology Law Committee, which is our kind of the biggest, most active group of lawyers in the world on this area. So we have about 500 lawyers that focus on surrogacy and assisted reproductive technology. So it's a way to just stay active in this field outside of the company itself. So when we're talking about laws, I mentioned we have a team of lawyers. We set up a separate, kind of personal legal journey for you. You'll have one attorney as a member of your team that Brett will talk about that helps you in the process. Basically, the most important laws are going to be obviously the law where the surrogate delivers, and that's going to be the law that creates parentage, that creates birth certificates and gives you all the rights you need, but also the law of your home country. Obviously, it's going to define citizenship, residency, and parentage issues. So we're kind of molding between those two when we're doing this. We don't take surrogates from certain states. Louisiana is one where the law is just very tricky and it's very Louisiana-centric. Michigan and Nebraska, where there are current bans on gestational surrogacy, although Michigan could change this year. Currently, we're not taking them from New York. New York just changed its surrogacy law, and it will be allowed as of February of 2021. But as of right now, the statute is written that only New Yorkers can use New York surrogates, so it would be closed out to anyone other than New York residents. There's going to be a contract phase after you've matched with your surrogate and donor, and your circle attorney will represent you during that process. So you'll have an attorney draft the contract, usually within a couple days of your match with your surrogate and donor, go over any changes, any questions you have, and then it's going to be sent out to an attorney who represents the surrogate and egg donor. They'll have their own independent private representation separate from Circle, but we're going to help negotiate, and you'll be your attorneys during that process. Securing your parentage rights, obviously very important as well, probably the most important part of this whole process. And that's done through a couple ways. That's properly matching you with a surrogate that lives in a state where legally surrogacy is allowed, and whatever you specifically need from your country, your citizenship, all those standpoints, whether it's a birth certificate with both intended parents, a confirmatory post-birth order, a birth certificate with dad and surrogate first, we're making sure whatever you specifically need or want can happen in that state. And usually you're working potentially with an attorney in your home country just to potentially, to give advice either way on what's the best way to do it or what they think it should be. And then managing that legal work at the end, working with a competent attorney in the surrogate's home state to make sure everything's being done properly, efficiently, and you're getting your full rights secure throughout that process. And then last, we say we want to make the pregnancy your pregnancy. And obviously, you're going to be many, many miles away, but a surrogate is going to be carrying your child. So we want you to feel as informed and as empowered throughout the process. Your surrogate, you're going to have a relationship with them, discussing appointments with you back and forth, but we also want that ability to reach out to doctors if can be, to get second and third opinions if need be, and from the moment the baby's born, making all decision rights at the hospital for the baby's medical questions and issues, etc. Insurance. So the biggest, I don't say biggest issue, but one of the big issues that comes up for international parents is the insurance issue, because we have a whole different system here. Most, even when people have global cover, may not have cover in the United States. So the two things that are from an insurance perspective are the surrogates insurance, and then obviously the potential insurance for baby or babies to be born. So from the surrogate side, it doesn't really matter. In our fixed fee program, you're paying one set cost, and that's going to cover all the surrogate's medical and insurance related expenses. So, whether your surrogate has her own insurance or she needs to purchase a plan, or medical costs, a huge thing happens and it costs a lot of money, you don't have to worry. You've paid one set cost for insurance and medical costs throughout the pregnancy, for a life insurance product to protect the surrogate in case she was to pass away, and for IVF complications insurance to protect surrogates and egg donors if an egg donor is needed. You pay it in that at the beginning. You don't worry about it at all. The dependent coverage, a little different. Obviously, you're not a U.S. citizen, and if you are, there may be plans available. But if you aren't a U.S. citizen, there are some global insurance plans out there you can buy to add some protection for the baby or babies to be born, or you can take on the risk and pay the out-of-pocket costs at the hospital for the baby's medical costs. Usually, a singleton in the United States with no complications is going to be somewhere in the $1,000 to $4,000 range. Most hospitals have automatic discounts that are just built in, so you can get a 20 to 80% discount at hospitals to pay before you leave. But those are the issues. And then our fixed cost program. So we have two tracks. We have what's called fixed, and we have journey protection guarantee. The major difference between the two being, how the extra costs are paid if there's failed transfers or miscarriages. So the fixed cost program is roughly somewhere in the 125 to 150,000, whether you're using a donor or not. And basically what it is you pay roughly that money, and this is irregardless of IVF, so you'd have to add IVF in. That process should get you one transfer, and if successful, entirely through a pregnancy and delivery. However, if you have a failed transfer or if you have a miscarriage or something happens, if you want to proceed to the second or third transfer, it's a $10,000 fee each successive transfer. So even if you had a 4-month miscarriage and expended $30,000 to $40,000, you only pay $10,000 to get you through the next phase. So it's that program people will choose if they think, I'm going to get pregnant on the first transfer, so I'm not going to pay anything extra up front. If I need a second or third, I'll just pay that cost. Our journey protection guarantee, which is below it, is basically you pay that extra $10,000 once at the beginning prior to doing a transfer, and that extra $10,000 gives you either unlimited transfers throughout the process, or it gives you up to 5 embryo transfers if you want to stop at 5 embryo transfers. If you don't have a live child brought home with you to Australia, you get your agency feedback plus potential third-party costs that are still left in your account. So it'll depend on how your journey went. But if you have 5 transfers, no success ever, and you just want to leave the program because you're just done with it, etc., you would get your agency feedback plus some other monies. So those are our two major programs. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Brett. Brett's going to talk to you about the process, about how we choose surrogates and egg donors. And then again, I'm back at the end from a legal or from any questions and answers that come up. But Brett, can you hear me?
I can. Chris is having some issues from the looks of things. Dean,
yeah, it looks like he just
he's just dropped out. Yeah, he said he lost sound at some point towards the end of your presentation as well. So he was messaging me. So just so you're aware, I'm hoping everybody out there got to hear everything Dean had to say. He thinks it might be his internet. So okay. hopefully we'll get Chris back.
All right, wonderful.
Lovely. Thanks, Dean. Right, so the process, surrogates and egg donors. So I'm Brett Griffin-Young. If you've had any contact with Circle, you've most likely had correspondence with me. You will have either had an email or a conversation in some shape or form. I am based in the United Kingdom. You'll probably tell from my accent. I'm not in Boston. I'm based in the UK, which is great for the Australian time zone. We've hauled Dean out of bed this morning at 4 a.m. to start this call at 5. For me, it was 11 a.m. in the morning. So actually, the UK-Australia time zone works really well. I've been with Circle for 10 years now, and as Dean said, I am a parent through the program. My son is 10 and a half. Sebastian was born in Denver, Colorado. My daughter, who is 7 and a half, came to us through adoption. We adopted her when she was about 8 months or so old. And my next child, my son, is due in just over 10 weeks' time. Gosh, I say it out loud, it's quite scary. Just over 10 weeks' time in Dallas, Texas. So we're completing our family with one more child. I hope you get to speak to Chris. It looks like he's back online. I keep saying to Chris he needs to have another one. I'm going for 3. I think everybody should have 3 kids. It's amazing. Yeah, that's my little story. That's who I am. Let's start with the surrogacy process then. The first thing that will happen is a consultation. Now that would be with myself and Dean. And we would go over everything that we've touched on today, but in more detail and bespoke to you, because as Dean said, everybody comes to surrogacy with a slightly different story. I even see it with gay couples. There's always something that is slightly different to the previous couple or the next couple. So in the consultation, we're going to go over what it is you require, when you require it by, and what your family building plans are. Once you've decided to work with us, it's a formal welcome. I usually get to send that email and say welcome to the program and introduce you to your team of people at Circle who are going to manage your process for you. And they're going to help you with a variety of things. we can introduce you to some clinics, some IVF clinics. If you don't know any in the US, we'll help with that introduction. We'll help you with the egg donor selection. If you need an egg donor, that of course, we work with the surrogate matching, finding the right person for you from a legal perspective, from a personality perspective, from a location perspective, and so on and so on. You then have the IVF process, you have your pregnancy, birth, and return home. I mean, that is sort of a very quick overview of the whole process. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. I think one of the reasons why my husband and I chose Circle all those years ago, because we did speak with several agencies, and we really liked the support that Circle offered. There is a team approach now. There's a manager and a coordinator, which means you have two people assigned to your journey, your day-to-day running of your journey, which means if one's off sick or on holiday or anything like that, the other person is always there for you. And they're going to be your liaison for all the parties. So when you're matched with your surrogate, they become your surrogates coordinator and manager as well. So they will liaise between yourselves, the surrogate, the egg donors, insurance clinic, hospitals, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on and on. They are instrumental in orchestrating your entire journey. They will assist with matching for your surrogate and your donor. They coordinate all the travel for your surrogate and the donor. I mean, in many cases, they will help you with the travel as well. If you're unfamiliar and will need some help or assistance, they can jump in and help with that as well. They handle all the payments for the surrogate, the donor, the medical billing, and all third parties. And then they also prepare the hospital. In fact, we've got our 30-week call coming up at the beginning of next week with our team to discuss our hospital preparation really, and they will then update the hospital on what our plans are. And they'll also assist with the return home. And I think this has been incredibly interesting to watch the global pandemic unfold and the impact that it had on surrogacy. At the beginning, I really did think, gosh, this is going to impact surrogacy a lot. And yes, it has impacted. Of course it has. It's impacted every single one of us. But the assistance that's been given in helping people get to their babies in time and get their babies home is just been phenomenal to watch. This is hopefully not something you will need to experience when you go through your journey. Dean touched on the surrogates a little earlier about the high standards that we have for them, and it is incredibly high. To give you an idea, it says here that we accept roughly 1 to 2% of the applicants who begin the application to be a surrogate. Now, what that means in real terms is of the roughly 1,500 women that apply each month to be a surrogate or start the process saying, I'm interested in being a surrogate, of those 1,500, we are accepting between 15 and 25. It's an incredibly strict and difficult program to get into as a surrogate. But it also means that all of our surrogates are fully screened prior to matching, and that is something that not all agencies do. And it is the reason why we will say to you there is a match time to be matched with a surrogate. It depends on what you're looking for in that surrogate, but there is a specific length of time. We're not presenting you with a woman that could maybe not be able to carry a baby a bit later on down the line. Once you get to your doctor, the doctor goes, this woman's, we can't use her. All of the surrogates have been fully screened before they're presented to you. So we know they're good to go. We're looking for women who genuinely want to help others. If at any point they're just interested in the money, we're not interested. It's not about the money here. It's about wanting to make a difference to people's lives. And that may sound corny, but you will be astonished when you speak to your surrogate around their reason or their motivation for doing it. They will tell you it's because they want to help somebody else. And that's the sort of person that we're looking for. Some of the highlighted requirements, and this list goes on, and it changes every now and then as we sort of fine tune and improve things. But a healthy BMI within the clinic guidelines. They have to be aged between 21 and 41 years of age. They have to have given birth to a healthy child. This is really important. We will look at their medical records and make sure that the obstetric history is fine. They go through full psychological screening. There's a medical approval stage. They have to, obviously, as Dean was talking about, live in a surrogate-friendly state within the US. They have to have the support of the family and friends. And the obvious one is not to use any illegal drugs or smoke or drink alcohol during the pregnancy. Let's just talk a little bit about our egg donors. This is one of my favorite subjects, actually. I quite enjoy the whole egg donor part. It's really rather interesting choosing an egg donor. We have our own egg donor database, and you can actually go and have a look at it now if you want to. It's on the Circle surrogacy.com website, and you just click on the donors. There's a register page. It sort of says log in here. Just beneath that is a tiny little link. Well, I say tiny little, there's a small link that says register here. Just register your details and you can have a look at some of the egg donors. Some of the highlighted requirements: 20 to 29 years of age. So we're looking for young, healthy ladies. They have to have a healthy family history. There can be no use of illegal drugs or cigarettes or alcohol abuse. And there has to be some level of post-high school education. Most of the donors have got some form of college education as well. And then if you can't find anything within our egg donor database, we do have other agencies that we work with, that we partner with, that would expand your options as well. They have the same protocols and criteria that we have for egg donors. Thanks, Dean. Egg donation matching types. Now, this is something that I really find interesting as well, because when my husband and I first came to this process, I said I wanted a completely anonymous surrogate. I wanted a completely anonymous egg donor. I would not want to speak to these women ever again in my life. As soon as their baby's born, we're disappearing back to England and they shall never see this child. That couldn't be further from what actually happened. We have an amazing relationship with our egg donor and surrogate for our first child, Sebastian, and exactly the same for our second child. Say third child, our second surrogacy child. But there are different types of matching types. So known donation, and this is something that we went for. This is where the intended parents and the egg donor can exchange contact information. You can also introduce your child to the egg donor. And some of you may be recoiling a little bit in horror at that, but actually it's an incredibly powerful, wonderful relationship to have with your egg donor, and for your child to know who helped create them. You know, what 50% of their DNA is made up by the egg donor. As a child, you would want to know that. The known donation also provides the option to receive updated medical information about the egg donor and her family. And again, I think this is so very important, because if something does change in her medical history in her 30s, to be able to pick up the phone to you and call you and just say, hi guys, listen, you know, I've developed this condition, please look out for it in your child, is invaluable. Semi-known donation is somewhere in the middle of anonymous, which I'm going to get to in a minute, but it does what it says on the tin. Semi-known donation is where the egg donors and the intended parents will exchange some demographic information, and they have the option to contact via Skype or telephone, or even at the fertility clinic. However, there's no exchange of last names or any other identifying information. And then, as I said, the anonymous donation it involves no contact between the egg donor and the intended parents. The egg donor contract lists first names only, and in some cases not even the first name. Sometimes it's the initials, and the egg donors just agree to keep them, the IVF clinic or the egg donation team, updated on any changes to their health, and provide updated contact information in the event that we need to get hold of them in an emergency. This fits for some people, and we don't push anybody in one direction or another. It's what's going to work best for you. I'm just a very loud, proud advocate of known donation. Having a child who we've adopted who has no access to her biological background is very difficult for both her and us as her parents. Whereas my son has full access to everything. So I'm a big fan of that. But this is the sort of thing that we would talk about in the consultation, and it is absolutely what works best for you and your family. Right, starting your surrogacy journey. So as I said, you would have a consultation with us. You would meet with Dean and myself. The slide actually says Monday through Friday, evenings and weekends. It really is Monday through Friday, evenings and weekends. Anybody who knows me will tell you that I'm so used to working on these different time zones. I actually quite enjoy the Australian ones because it's evening time for you and it's morning time for me. But if it's evenings that work best for you, or if it's first thing in the morning and evening time, our time, it really doesn't matter. We will find a time that works for you. We were hoping to meet in person. I was feeling a little sad this morning because I was meant to be on my way to your fair shores today. We were meant to be in Oslo this weekend. I was in Australia back in February. I managed to get Dean to come over as well. He traveled the 587,000 miles or whatever it takes to get to you guys. And he arrived during that Sydney monsoon. I think you may remember that back in February, where I think his view of the harbour bridge was a misty structure in sort of pelting rain. But we have visited Australia. That was my 7th trip, I believe. And we were due to be there again now, but obviously because of COVID, we can't be there. And we've turned our trip into virtual consultation. So we're happy to do them via Skype or Zoom at a time that fits for you guys. We also will offer in person in Boston, New York, San Francisco on a weekly basis. We have an office in San Francisco, we have New York, and we have the main Boston office. But again, due to COVID, the consultations are taking place virtually. During the consultation, you're going to speak with myself, as I said, and Dean to review the program and our protocols. And again, just that we tailor them to what you require. We'll also take the time to answer any questions. I think Chris will probably talk a little bit about this, but I remember Chris and his husband's consultation very well. That was an in-person one, and you know, everybody comes with a set of questions, and we're more than happy to answer any questions. I say to everybody at the beginning of my consultations, I'm an open book, and you will learn that about me. I really am an open book. Ask me anything. I won't be offended, and there are no stupid questions when it comes to surrogacy. So come armed with all your questions. If you want to schedule that consultation, that is my email address, bgriffin-young@circlesurrogacy.com. You'll also find me on the website, but do just send me an email. Let me know you want to have a chat, even if it's not for a full consultation. You just want to run some questions by me, not a problem. I can do that as well. I can set up a sort of more informal, brief 30-minute chat just to explain how things work in a bit more detail to you. So please do get in touch with me. And I do believe it's over to the wonderful Chris.
See if he can come off. He's self-muted right now.
He disappeared for a while and then came back. So I'm hoping we can get Chris on. I don't know what's happening in Australia. Is there, if there's a storm or something? Oh, there we go. Chris?
I think we're a jinx, but every time we have an Australian webinar.
I tell you what, the last time we had the Australian, we had exactly the same problem. Chris, we can see you're green and lit up, but
sometimes it doesn't. The audio doesn't work through certain computers.
He's muting and unmuting. We've got the secret behind the scenes lighting system, the green and red, and he's definitely green.
Why don't we, let's see, Chris, just barge in if you hear it. I'll move on to see if we have questions right now, and come back. But this is Chris's obviously beautiful family on the screen, his daughter Astrid. Hopefully he can tell a story. If not, we'll see. Looks like he's coming.
Hello?
Oh, there he is.
There we go.
There he goes.
You got me?
We got you.
Yes.
I'm gonna
Sorry
mute
about that.
Nye. That's all right.
So yeah, thanks everyone. My name's Chris. My husband Matthew and I live in Sydney, and we've been together for, oh gosh, probably over sort of 14 years now. So we sort of started to look into having children. We really have a close bond with our nieces, Matthew's sisters' children. And I think it sort of dawned on us that, you know, having kids of our own would be something that we would really want to explore and experience. So we looked at various options, and I think for us, surrogacy was sort of something that we thought would probably be the best option to suit us. We looked at, you know, the various countries, and I think we decided upon the US. It was really something that we, you know, it's pretty much the most what's the word, important decision and investment you'll make in your life. So we looked at other countries like India and some other countries in Southeast Asia and Latin America, and I think it was the regulations in the US and the history of being able to, I suppose, have everything done that was in a way that was sort of aligned with what we would experience in Australia. So we interviewed a number of agencies and via Skype, and I think we settled on Circle just because of they really gave us very useful and helpful information. Brett was one of the first people we met and gave us his story, and there was a lot of you know, the sharing of personal journeys with surrogacy and really that personal touch, which helped us sort of decide that surrogacy was the right thing for us, and that you know, Circle was the right agency for us as well. So we sort of embarked on the journey of finding an egg donor. That was done through a different agency for us. That was probably the most stressful part of it. We had to go through a number of donors. Not that they actually got to the donation stage, but they were either sort of withdrew consent at the last moment because they were first-time donors, or they weren't deemed medically appropriate for egg donation for one reason or another. So we finally got to the stage of having a successful egg donation and embryo creation. And then we were matched with our wonderful surrogate, Ashley. So I think that we were really lucky in that we were matched really quickly. And it was really good because Circle sort of kept us in the loop the entire time, gave us regular updates of where we were sitting. And we actually got matched a lot earlier than I think they had estimated as well. So it's almost like an online dating profile where you sort of put together a story about, what your story is, what your personal story is, and I suppose why you want to have children, and where you grew up and where you're currently living. And the same happens for those potential surrogates that want to be matched with intended parents. So we did that, and then we were matched pretty quickly. And then we sort of had an initial Skype call with our potential surrogate at the time, Ashley, and it went really well. I think we were quite hesitant because it was the first time for both Ashley and for us in terms of going through the whole process. So very sort of, what's the word? Just an introductory sort of discussion, introducing ourselves and really getting to know our reasons for surrogacy and our experience with kids. So that was really good. And then from there, we went through to, the legal process, which took, probably a couple of months or so. So we were pretty happy to move forward with Ashley. She was very, I think what we liked the most about Ashley was that she was just really warm, and she had a good sense of humor as well. So I think, when you're choosing your surrogate, I think you really have to click with them. I think initially it seems like, it's just a, I suppose, a long distance relationship as such. But I think that, what they're going through for you and the regular contact you'll have with them when they're actually, pregnant, carrying a child, is there's a lot involved. And certainly when you're actually there for the delivery as well, they're pretty much the only person in the town that you're there for a number of weeks whilst you're waiting to come home. So we were really lucky with her, and we sort of went through the legal process. And then we didn't meet her before the implantation. We did a lot of Skype calls. Circle were really great in sort of facilitating us building trust and a relationship with each other. So regular Skype calls initially to get to know each other, and then we Skyped in for the embryo transfer, which was probably a bit more low key than I thought it would be. It's pretty much done and dusted within a few minutes, and you sort of get, it's that sort of nervous period then when you wait to see whether or not you're pregnant. I think we're lucky in that since we're a same-sex couple, healthy sperm and a healthy egg donor, the success rate is actually relatively high. So with that, we found out we got pregnant the first time, no complications or issues at all. So it was actually relatively stress-free and incident-free. So we're quite lucky. We flew over to Iowa to meet Ashley and her family for the first time at the 20-week scan. So it was actually a really nice way to, I suppose, be there to meet the family and get to know her and a lot better, but also be there for the 20-week scan as well. And it sort of felt a lot more real. And really, that sort of continued in regular Skype chats, and just sort of, we got a lot of really cool updates from Ashley about, size of the bump, what size of fruit it was at the time. And also really what we thought was, great updates around, how she was feeling. She had quite bad nausea with the pregnancy initially, so that was quite an obstacle for her, quite a hurdle for her. But we sort of went from there and just got sort of updates on her life in Iowa, and I suppose really just trying to understand what we would be experiencing when we got there, and sort of sharing in the sort of life experiences that you have leading up to the birth of your first child. So baby showers and picking names. So it was all really, 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 really good fun, and really felt like she was part of our family, sort of preparing for the birth of our child. So we flew over probably I think 2 weeks before the due date. So we were lucky in that we had she had a previous cesarean section, so she had to have a cesarean section this time. So it actually made it a bit more predictable in terms of when she was actually going to deliver. So we spent a week in Chicago as sort of our baby moon to sort of relax as a couple before the onslaught of sleepless nights and looking after our newborn daughter, and then went to Iowa for the week before the due date and really got to spend time again with Ashley and her family, and really prepare for what we needed to, buying all the stuff that you need to buy when you're having a baby. And so when we got to the delivery, it was probably the best day of my life, one of the best days of my life. Just really being there in the hospital and having this little life sort of arrive into our family, and from there, and you suddenly have a child, and I think it doesn't really click that you have a child. It's sort of a bit surreal at first, particularly when you're in the hospital and it's in a different country without family there. It certainly feels a bit surreal, but certainly once we got used to it, it was unbelievable, and I think that it was made a lot easier by both Circle making everything clear in terms of the process, but also Ashley. She's one of those super organized people that made it her duty to make sure she followed up on all of her medical appointments, which sort of put our minds at ease, but also keeping us updated and making sure that we had faith that things were being done whilst we were in a different country. So it was really nice sort of spending we had to spend 5 weeks in Iowa after that. So I mean, the reason for that is obviously you can't fly immediately with a baby, but due to the state law there, it took a bit longer to both get the birth certificate, the passport, and both Matthew and my names added to the birth certificate. So again, it can vary with different states, but that was sort of the case in Iowa. And then from there, we really really bonded with Ashley. I think she was there, she was really the only person we knew there, and her family. So we probably hung out every second day. And obviously she held the baby a lot, and we were quite open with making sure that she got to spend time with Astrid as well. And we got a lot of parenting tips from her as well. And it was really nice to sort of share in that experience. And I think what we appreciate about that time was it was just time for us, for Matthew, Astrid, and I, and Ashley to a certain degree. We didn't have the daily visitors and family coming out of the woodwork to sort of, I suppose, disrupt the day to have a peek at the baby, which was nice when we got back. But I think we really appreciate that initial time when you're just getting used to being a first-time parent, being in your little bubble in the US. And certainly, we made the most of our time there as well, sort of going out to see Iowa when we could, and sort of meeting a lot of Ashley's extended family as well. They wanted to see the baby. So it was really something that will always be in our minds. And we've kept in touch with Ashley and very much, she's part of our family, albeit separated by a massive ocean. We actually met in Hawaii the beginning of last year when Ashley was 6 months. So really a family holiday together and I think Ashley's always keen to see photos, and we do Skype calls once in a while to make sure she can see. And I think she was really clear that up front that it wasn't her her baby, and she was really clear with boundaries, which made us much more comfortable and being more open and embracing a relationship with her. So yeah, we're really happy. I think we were at a stage, I think probably a year ago, where I was umming and ahhing about a second. Matthew was a clear one only, but we're probably happy with the one that we have at the moment. I think our family's complete. So, but yeah, I can't speak more highly of Circle and of our experience in the US. So, yeah, that's my story.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. So, a lovely story, and it's great. Chris actually was over here in Boston this year and was able to come to our house and meet my family as well. So it's nice to, I guess, somewhat go full circle, not meaning to have a pun intended, but I was over in Australia, as Brett mentioned. Brett and I travel usually 2-3 times a month, and it happens to be that our last trip from our homes was in Australia in February. So I'm going to open it up if there are questions. I know there was one question. This is our funny pictures from our last trip that I wanted to send, that the typical tourist photos of koalas, alligators, and Bindi, Irwin. But there was a question about whether or not the costs were in US or Australian dollars. They're all in US dollars. And I know that there is a exchange rate isn't at the greatest at the moment. But I also wanted to let people to know, I know there's always been this kind of fear from an Australian perspective of the laws in Australia not being the most beneficial to surrogacy, including doing surrogacy overseas. But I don't think you should let that fear get in your way. We've had many, many parents return to Australia with no issue, and many people, have done surrogacy in the U.S. outside of Circle, or done surrogacy in India or other countries and returned home with no issue. I don't think there's ever been actually a full criminal prosecution of anyone in New South Wales or in other territories where surrogacy is illegal. Sometimes it can cause, if you want to try and use the Australian court system to fully establish parentage rights under Australian law, there can be, some pushback from the courts because it is commercial surrogacy, but no one's had their, kind of rights taken away, et cetera. So, obviously speak to professionals, speak to people who've gone through the process in your country, but I wouldn't, worry about getting involved. There is a question, is the process easier if intended parents are married? I don't know if it's easier, except that it may open up more states in terms of getting both parents' rights established in the United States, and it may just offer further protections to the non-biological parent from an Australian perspective when you return home. So there's probably those protections. I don't think it's any easier or harder, though. I think, surrogates usually don't have issue with the parent's marital status as long as it's a couple that has a nice story and a relationship to begin with, but it can make it simpler to match in some states. I can add on to what Brett was talking about this whole COVID situation from a Circle perspective. Since travel bans have begun, we've had over 20 international couples have children in the United States. All but one of them were here in advance of the birth. One of them had a meeting with the embassy scheduled, and the baby came 3 weeks early. So they would have been in advance, but the baby came a little early. They were here a couple days after birth, so there was no issue. But we really, from morning one, when we heard about the travel bans, had basically an all hands on deck meeting. All of our teams, including my legal team, has worked tirelessly with our intended parents. I know Brett's provided a lot of support for our UK and other parents too, to help them, A, plan to the potential that they're not there in time for the birth, B, work with the US embassies around the world to get them in advance, providing documents, providing, assistance with their calls and meetings with the embassies. The secondary step has been trying to help them get home, which we've been working, with our counterparts and our colleagues in the countries where they're coming from to maybe get a here and there a French passport or a UK passport or Australian visas. But it's been surprisingly, not surprisingly, but pretty amazing to watch what's gone on behind the scenes and to assist all these couples. And I think Circle has taken a position in the industry, really at the forefront as well. On with webinars, with professional help, with helping people that aren't our Circle intended parents that are working with other agencies to provide whatever assistance we can. We helped lead professional-wide webinars for 7 straight weeks. We were panelists on all of them. We, have had agencies send us their parents that are having trouble getting to the United States to assist in the process. So, I think we've, not only assisted our whole, our set of intended parents, but we went above and beyond and helped, all the industry because we want, the best for everyone. Let's see, there's a question. Is it best to stay in the state the baby is born until the passport is issued? Reason being that I have close family friends in California and like to spend time. So no, there's no need to stay in the state where the passport or where the surrogate, the baby's born. Particularly California does have multiple passport offices, so you can do your passport process from California and not even do anything regarding the passport in your home state, or if they have an office and you want to start the expedited process where the surrogate delivers, you can have it still shipped to your friends or your family address in California, so you can leave. You can travel domestically in the United States without a passport. You'll have the court order and you'll have hospital discharge papers. So, our domestic parents, when they deliver in a state outside of their home state, they're usually on their way home 2-3 days after birth. So you could leave that quick if you really wanted to. Most of the legal work is done pre-birth, so you're not waiting for anything. It may help a little if you wait till the birth certificate's issued, just so that you're not having things shipped and you can get it in person, but you can travel domestically, throughout. We've been joking, Brett and I, that when his baby's born in Texas, he's going to move into my house here in Massachusetts.
You think it's a joke? It's not a joke.
But in that scenario, Brett would be able to leave basically immediately after if he wanted to, from a domestic standpoint, and do passport work, etc., from Boston. So there's no reason to stay where the surrogate is. You can go stay with family. See if there's wait a couple of minutes for any other questions.
What was your highlight of your trip to Australia, Dean?
My highlight, because of weather, it was probably more of the people we met with than anything, which has become the highlight of most trips. But we did have beautiful weather in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And the city itself was cool. I would say that the Thai restaurant, what was it called? Chin or Chi Chi's or Chin Chin. That was a big highlight. Someone just wrote Chin Chin on the page. Brett usually leaves me early when we're on trips, so I like to spite him by going to the best restaurant the night he leaves. So he had a night flight and I had a morning flight the next day, so I went to Chin Chin. But no, I was actually going through pictures to send Jen these pictures on the screen for the Q&A slide, and even though it was a very short trip, it was pretty packed, and we did meet a lot of we had dinner with Chris and his husband. We had met some Circle parents in other places, Damien. So it was nice to have those visits, but also at least say I've been to Australia now. It wasn't the longest and most adventurous trip, but I have been there. The smell of koala pee was great too. I'll always have that in my mind. Koala urine is an interesting when you're in a hot, muggy area that's all enclosed because it's raining outside.
Well, we'll be back, Dean. I don't doubt you'll come again. We have been in the past for Mardi Gras, which was unbelievably insane. I've never seen anything quite like it in my life. But I'm genuinely a huge fan of Australia. I think The country is incredibly beautiful. I love the people. And it is a shame you didn't get the good weather, because I desperately, some of you listening probably agree with this, but the Bondi to Coogee walk is just probably one of the most spectacular walks anywhere in the world. The view is just out of this world, but you have to have the good weather. And unfortunately, we just had that monsoon the whole time. It stopped raining, remember, when we got to the airport.
Right, right. No, our last morning in Sydney.
In Sydney, it was blue skies and smoking hot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks like that's all the questions. So thank you everyone for taking part. Thank you, Chris, for your amazing story and being part of this and always helping out when need be. Thanks, obviously, Brett, for your piece. Any questions you have, Brett's email, you can go to our website and find us. You can find us on social media. As I said, this is being recorded. You'll get it all sent to you, but feel free to reach out to any of us directly after today. And we're happy to either have a full consultation or just provide some questions in advance of a full consultation. Wonderful. Have a lovely night, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon in the future. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Dean. Bye.
Thanks, team. Bye, guys. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye, Brett. Bye.